We're going to be in Daniel chapter 2 tonight. If you want to turn your Bibles to Daniel chapter 2. I had it open a second ago, and then I closed my Bible, and I did not put my ribbon down. All right. So we started studying Daniel a couple weeks ago. We're going to pick up where we left off. We noticed that Daniel was in Babylon, suffering some temptations, some trial there in Babylon as the Babylonians were trying to assimilate him and his friends and have them join them in everything that they were doing to be a Babylonian. And Daniel stood his ground and took a stand. He refused to conform to the society around him. And the result was God took care of him. God knew what he was going through. God was still with him, even though he had been abandoned, so to speak, and allowed to be taken off into exile. God knew exactly what was going on the whole time, and he was able to provide for Daniel. Well, that storyline, that message of God knowing and God doing is really throughout this book. So you're going to hear that kind of idea being mentioned over and over and over again, which is good, right? We need to hear it over and over again, that God knows, God sees, God has the power to do something, God is in control. And that's very much what we're going to be studying about tonight, the fact that he is in control. But who do we believe is in control? It's one thing to come together with people of like-minded faith and to say we know God's in control. But as we leave this building, we go out into our world and live our daily lives, who do we really believe is in control? Who seems like they're in control? Who appears to have the power? Who appears to have the wisdom and the knowledge? Who appears to be impenetrable to any attack? And who appears to have the ability to manipulate things to turn out for their own good? Well, throughout our lives, we might feel like other people are in control. We might feel like there are certain people who have the power, who have the authority. And that just the idea of opposing them or going against them might send shivers down us, right? The fear of thinking that this person is going to be my enemy or that I'm going to go against this person might terrify us. And realistically, whenever life gets tough and things don't go our way, we might opt to turn to the person who appears to have power, who appears to have wisdom and knowledge in this world, rather than turning to God. And so this is very much what we're going to be looking at and studying about tonight is thinking about our belief and our understanding of who is really in control. And we really want to solidify the idea in our minds so that we are convinced that God is the one who's in control and so that we're desiring to turn to him in all of life's difficult situations. If you're there with me in Daniel chapter 2, let's start by reading the first section. Now, we're going to get through this whole chapter, and we're going to read a pretty good bit of it. But I think the storyline really speaks for itself, and it needs to be read. So, verse 1 in Daniel 2, it says, "In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, 'I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream.' Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, 'O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation.' The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, 'The word for me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you'll receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, just show me the dream and its interpretation.' They answered a second time and said, 'Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we'll show its interpretation.' The king answered and said, 'I know with certainty that you're trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, There is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There's not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with the flesh." Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed. And they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent?" Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the king the interpretation to the king. All right, we'll pause right there. 16 verses. All right. So as we read through that, you saw the picture of the king being very upset, and these magicians in turn becoming very upset, and everybody really being very upset as a result of a dream that Nebuchadnezzar was given in the middle of a night. And so as we read this, we start to think about magicians and we start to think about kings, right? They're the major players in this story. The magicians would have been the source of wisdom and knowledge and insight from the gods. They were the interpreters of the stars, and they were the interpreters of the signs, and they could go to the gods and they could perform certain rituals and sacrifices to find out things and to understand things that the gods had revealed to them so that the kings would know what to do. So in some ways, the magicians had tremendous power. They had the illusion of power, at least, in the things that they were doing. They were believed to have had power by the Babylonian kings and by the kings throughout all the earth. They would rely on these magicians to help them make decisions. It's interesting, as you look at Ezekiel, you learn about the king of Babylon was trying to make decisions about which nation to go to next. And God said he made it turn out that they were going to Jerusalem. God was working in the signs to make it evident that he needed to go to Jerusalem. Didn't matter what sign they did, the answer was always, you need to go to Jerusalem and destroy Jerusalem. So this is the way that they operated. They always looked for signs from the gods. And it's interesting that sometimes our God would actually interfere with their nonsense and bring about his will through their magic that they were trying to perform. And magicians have been throughout history. We learn about the magicians in Egyptian time. So they were always there. They were these sorcerers and sorceresses who were providing insight into the spiritual realm, is what they were alluding to or saying that they could do. Notice also that the kings are talked about here, and kings are this ultimate figure of authority, right? The king says, off with their head, it's off with their head. Or in this case, pull them apart limb from limb. It's pull them apart limb from limb. He's the symbol of authority. He's the symbol of power. And he has control over the things that go on in the kingdom. He is the ultimate authority. But notice in this text that both groups are flustered. They're frustrated by their lack of control and their lack of power. Started with the king, the most powerful man on the earth, who has no ability to control what happens to him while he sleeps. And God can take something so small as a dream and disturb his life and terrify him. And it appears that's very much what he's done. To the point now where he does not believe in the magicians who he's put his trust in and have brought him so much success to establish him as the king over Babylon and to destroy so many enemies. He now doesn't even trust them because he's so frustrated and terrified by the dream that he has had. He doesn't believe that they know what the dream is. He doesn't believe that they would know the interpretation. He thinks they'd just be making it up. As you read through this, you see that very clearly. He doesn't believe it. So what does he do? Well, he feels like he has no control, and so he takes the control away from the magicians and says, I'm going to be in control, and you're going to tell me the dream and its interpretation. And these magicians have no idea what to do. Because, you can interpret a dream once you hear the story. You can interpret a dream a million different ways. You just got to make something up on the spot and do some fancy stuff to look like you know what you're talking about. But whenever it comes to knowing what was in the mind of Nebuchadnezzar the king as he slept, you have to have true supernatural power. And they don't have that. And so you see them unable to answer the king, unable to provide what's necessary. Their power is shown to be absent whenever the pressure is put on them. So here we have a king who is powerless, and here we have magicians who are powerless, and then enters Daniel. We learn about Daniel being one of the wise men from Judah who stood out among the crowd, and he is one of the wise men who will be put to death along with everyone else because no one can tell the king his dream or the interpretation. Well, when the news comes to Daniel, he says to Arioch, who's about to allow everybody or have everybody killed, give me a time with the king. And so he gets the time with the king. And then we learn about Daniel's plan and how Daniel's going to address this issue. Because, if he dies, then what's the point of saving him from, the previous having to eat all these unclean foods? What's the point of him being in Babylon? And what's the value of his life? Verse 17, it says, Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from God, and from the God of heaven, concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore, Daniel went into Arioch, from whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Now notice as you read through this, Daniel shows an extreme amount of humility. He doesn't say, I can figure this out. Just let me think really hard. He says, I can't do this, and we can't do this, but we need to go to the one who can. He recognizes that God can reveal this to him. And he doesn't say, okay, I'm going to figure this out by going to God in prayer, and God's going to reveal it to me because I've been such a good servant of his. I've done all the things he's asked me to do in Babylon. I've not eaten of these meats, and so he's got to answer me because he's got to keep me alive because I'm really valuable to him. He doesn't approach it that way at all. He goes to his friends and he says, we all need to do this. We all need to join together in this prayer and ask God to give us mercy. Ask God to reveal to us the mystery. And so he does. He goes to his friends. He asks God to reveal the mystery. And in a vision of the night, it says, God reveals to Daniel the mystery. I imagine Daniel received the same dream as Nebuchadnezzar. And the interpretation and the explanation of that dream was also given to him. So he turns after that and he runs to the king as fast as he can to avoid being put to death. No. He first praises God upon hearing the answer. And his praise of God is fascinating, isn't it? That he would say, he's the one who changes the times and the seasons. He's the one who removes and sets up kings. Babylon is the one who has been removing and setting up kings. And yet Daniel recognizes God's the one who used Babylon to do this. And so there's that little hint in there that he has faith. God is the one who's really in control, which the dream itself has revealed this to Daniel. We're not told the interpretation at this point, but at this point he understands the dream, and he knows that God is the one who has the power to set up kings and remove kings. And that to me is extremely important in all the things that are given here. God is the one with the ultimate power. The ultimate power. Kings look like they have tons of power, but God has power. So we think about all the people in our life that look really powerful to us. Maybe people that we're afraid of, or people who we look up to, we respect, and we consider them to be very powerful individuals. They have no power compared to God. And that's exactly the point that we're supposed to be seeing in this. Also, notice he says he gives wisdom, he gives knowledge. In him there's no darkness, but in him is the light. And so there's a picture that these wise men are foolish. You know, 1 Corinthians, the wisdom of man is foolishness to God. You know, he has much greater wisdom, much greater knowledge, much greater insight into the hidden things of this world. Oh, man. Sunday nights, I'm developing the cough every time. So, anyway. All right, so how do we respond to life's serious problems whenever we're faced with it? You see how Daniel responds? He responds not with pride and arrogance saying, I can accomplish this. Not saying, I'm so good and righteous, God will surely fix this for me in my life. But he just turns to God in humility and says, God, please have mercy. Please help me see. Help me understand. You are the God who has power. You are the God who has wisdom. You are the God who has knowledge. You are the God who can fix the problem that I'm going through right now, even though it seems impossible. I mean, how impossible is it for you to know the dream of someone else and for you to know the meaning of the dream, even though it seems impossible? Daniel believed, he had faith, and he trusted in God. Notice even before this, he sets up the appointment before going to God in prayer. He put his trust that he was going to have that appointment and he was going to have an opportunity to reveal this, and that God was going to give him the knowledge and the insight, and God delivered. And so we need to have similar trust, similar faith that God is with us, but not arrogant faith, humility also. And then turning around and recognizing God when he does work things out for our good, just as he's promised that he would. Well, Daniel enters into the presence of the king, and the king asks him, do you know what this is all about? Do you know the dream and the interpretation? And verse 27, Daniel answers the king and says, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. First thing he says is the same thing all those wise men said, which is interesting. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay on the bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, the mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. Notice his words are just ringing with humility. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and exceeding, and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold, all together were broken in pieces, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron that crushes. It shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with the clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and incense be offered to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made a request to the king, and appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained at the king's court. So here in this last section of the chapter, we see the dream being revealed and its meaning. And so as we go through this, you notice it's this frightening statue that stood before the king, and that it was made of all these different materials. It had gold, it had silver, it had bronze, it had iron mixed with clay. And you get the picture that this is a terrifying image, you know. Whatever this image is, whatever this statue is, it's in a position of battle. It's in a position of war. And as the king of Babylon sees it, he sees this great, big, mighty statue, and he's been terrified by it. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of this beautiful, glorious image standing before him, a huge stone cut by no human hands comes in and shatters it. Now, if you have a dream and you're seeing this big image, maybe at first you're like, oh, maybe that's me. You know, that'd be cool, right? I'm this big, strong image. And then you see this big stone come and shatter it. Well, that doesn't sound good. And so you could see how he might be terrified. So as you read through this, you learn this is his dream. And it was a very vivid dream that meant something. He knew it meant something. But what did it mean? Well, Daniel reveals what it means. He says, God knows and God controls all the kingdoms of the earth. He says, Nebuchadnezzar, King of kings, God is the one who gave you this kingdom. God is the one who gave you rule over all the kings of the earth. He gave you rule over all the animals on the earth. And God has revealed to you what will happen in the latter days. The latter days is a phrase that's found throughout the Old Testament, and it's intended to refer to the last days, the days after the exile are over, the days of the Messiah. And that's what he's referring to. That's what he's talking about. And so he reveals that there's going to be 4 kingdoms after the three kingdoms after the Babylonian kingdom. The Medo-Persian Empire is going to rise up, the Greek Empire is going to rise up, and then the Romans are going to rise up. So he says, you are the head of gold, and then the other kingdoms are after you. And the Roman Empire is the iron mixed with clay. And as you go through these different metals, you notice that they decrease in splendor, right? You go from gold to silver to bronze to iron, but they increase in strength. And the Roman Empire was an extremely strong empire. It went all the way across the earth, right? I mean, all the way across that part of the earth, all the way even up into Britain. So it was an enormous empire, a very powerful empire that crushed and controlled much of the world at that time. And God says, in the time of that kingdom, He's going to send this rock, cut by no human hand. Instead of this beautiful fashioned image, you have a rock cut by no human hand, and it's going to smash that image, and it's going to set up the mountain of God, which was talked about in Isaiah. In our studies of Isaiah, we saw that. And so now He's bringing in the Messianic kingdom into this stream. So as you read through all of this, you're actually getting a taste of the Messianic kingdom, the eternal kingdom of God being set up. God is choosing to reveal this to the king of Babylon. Why? Because He knows who's going to reveal what's in the dream. And He knows that the story of this dream is going to permeate history, and even to the point where we see it today. And He knows that the knowledge that God knew what was going to happen in all the kingdoms of the earth for the next 600 years is going to be found in the book of Daniel. God knew it, and He foretold it, and He brought it all about. He established His kingdom through Christ in the first century at the time of the Romans. All of these prophecies come true. A lot of people say that we're waiting for the kingdom of God to be established on the earth. Well, this very clearly says that in the time of the Roman kingdom, that kingdom of God is going to be established. And that's very much what we see happen as we come into the New Testament. We just studied Revelation 11, and we saw that it very clearly said the praises to God because He has given the kingdom to His Christ. That Jesus is ruler over the kingdoms of the earth. He is the King of kings and Lord of lords. His kingdom has been established. In Hebrews 12:28, it says very clearly that it is an unshakable and eternal kingdom. Daniel said, this kingdom shall stand forever. We go throughout the Old Testament, we learn all about this kingdom, we learn all about this king, and here is God choosing to reveal to the king of Babylon, you're the beginning of the Messianic kingdom. All the things that you're doing are just setting it up, just preparing the way for the Messianic kingdom to come. You have been the one who's destroyed the physical kingdom that I've set up on the earth, and you are going to be the one who begins the process of establishing my eternal spiritual kingdom on the earth and in heaven. And so that's what we get right here in Daniel chapter 2, a foretelling of the kingdom of God being established on the earth. It's fascinating as you read through this. You don't get the sense that Nebuchadnezzar really grasped the significance of all of this. You don't really get the sense of the Jewish people grasping the significance of all this. But during the time of Jesus, whenever He comes on the earth, they're in the Roman kingdom, and they're expecting the kingdom to be established at some point in their lives. And Jesus comes onto the scene and says, the kingdom of heaven is near. It's here. It's coming. And that's exactly what He does. He establishes it. We could go through and look at a number of application points on all of this, but I want to really draw out the main message of this whole section. Who do we believe is in control? Who do we believe is in control? In light of Daniel 2, we can see how oftentimes men claim to be in control. Men claim to have insight and knowledge and power and authority, and they appear to have all of that. But in certain situations, it becomes extremely evident they have no idea what they're doing. They have no power. They have no control. And so as we think it might be advantageous to lean on men for our salvation, for our hope, for our peace, for our prosperity, we need to see how miserable people have been throughout history who've done that. Israel over and over again puts their trust in all these nations and all these men, and they don't get them anywhere. They lead to their destruction. And we will do the same if we misplace our trust in the illusion of man's power, man's wisdom, man's knowledge. In our day, there is so much wisdom of men being just thrown out there in the world. We're in the information age. We can find it all over the place, and everybody thinks they know everything. And we need to be very careful about what we're listening to and who we're listening to and who we're trusting in. We need to make sure that we're putting our trust in God alone. He shows himself as being the one who has power that is greater than anyone who's ever lived on the earth. He has more insight and wisdom and knowledge even of the future. And he can orchestrate events to bring about his will. And so really this is pointing to that very truth. And so as we know that God is sovereign, that God is the one who's in control, how are we going to approach life? Well, I hope that we'll approach it like Daniel. Daniel is powerless, and he recognizes he's powerless, and he's humble. And he recognizes that if he's going to be saved and if he's going to have any kind of life on earth, it's going to be in God's hands, and he's okay with that. He basically puts his life in God's hands. He puts his faith in God. And he says, God, you are the one who is going to reveal this. You are the one who's going to save us. If anybody can save us, it's got to be you. And we see that he is rewarded heavily for his faith. Nebuchadnezzar even raises him up to be second in command, basically, of the kingdom over the province of Babylon. It's a very high honor for anyone. And here is a Jew who has been lifted up in this way. In our lives, we might find ourselves lifted up, not because we trusted in men, not because we trusted in those who appeared the most powerful and we pursued their favor, but we might be raised up because we trust in God. And that's just going to give us an opportunity to glorify his name. And that's what Daniel does with this opportunity. He is not excited, probably, I don't imagine he's excited at all about them offering sacrifices to him or lifting him up in this way, but he's going to take advantage of that opportunity, and he's going to do what's best. As you read through this, you notice he has this heart that even loves the other wise men who are with him. He doesn't allow them to be killed. He doesn't say, okay, well, you kill everybody else and then come to me and I'll reveal the dream. But he's even looking out for them. And now he's made a leader of them. And so how much of an impact is his message going to have on other people as he gets lifted up and exalted above them? So hopefully that you see that. And remember this word. I love this phrase in verse 22. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. In life, there's all kinds of darkness. We're surrounded by darkness. But God has the light. And if we trust in him and we put him first, we walk in the light. And we have power over the darkness. That's what he promises us. You see, really here, this is a demonstration of God's power of light over darkness. That he can control and dictate what happens in the affairs of even the most wicked people on the earth and bring about the success and the glorification of his own people. Daniel just seeks to glorify God, and God returns glory on Daniel for his faith and his faithfulness. And I hope that God does that for all of us, that he returns glory on us, not so that we can use it for ourselves, but so that we can in turn extend more glory to God and find a way to set an example for others to follow and turn to God also and find the hope that we have. Thank you so much for listening tonight to Daniel. I enjoy this study so much. I hope that you're enjoying it as well. I hope that you're encouraged by the faithfulness of Daniel to go out and to put your trust in God and do the things that are difficult and uncomfortable in this life not believing that men have all the power, all the wisdom, all the insight, but instead believing that God is the one who gives us power and wisdom and insight whenever we put our trust in Him. James tells us that if we lack wisdom, all we have to do is ask God and He'll provide it. He's with us, He cares about us, He loves us, and He has the power to work providentially in the lives that we live outside this building. And we need to put our trust in Him and have faith in that. If you're here today and you've not yet put your trust in Him, you've not yet noticed and recognized that He is the source of life for you, the source of strength, the source of eternity, then we want you to make that decision today. We want you to put your trust in Him. If there's anything else that you need and you need to let the church here know, we'll pray for you and help you in any way we can. Please come as we stand and as we sing.